Welcome to the Armchair Fantasy Show podcast, episode 209, brought to you by the Going for Two Live Network. We're live every Wednesday night at 9:30 p.m. on Facebook Live and YouTube. Tonight we have a special episode with Rob Lockey and Joe Pisapia, and let's kind of hop into it. Joe, welcome back to the show. Tell everybody where they can find you and a little bit about yourself here.
Well, thanks for having me, Ryan. It's probably easier to not find me. I think you should hide from me. That's probably way easier. But yeah, of course, you find me on the Twitter machine at Joe Pisapia 17. Of course, hosting all the Fantasy Pros podcasts and video stuff that we got going on there, which is keeps me very busy. And of course, the new Fantasy Football Black Book 2021 with glorious cover behind me on the screen out there on Amazon right now. Crushing life, but I'm happy to hang out with you boys and talk a little football here tonight.
Awesome. And Rob, one of our guys over at Going for Two, making his first time on the show, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Find you. Glad to have you on, and thanks for filling in last minute. But tell everybody where they can find you and what you're working on for Going for Two.
Sure, absolutely. No, I'm super excited to be on. Thanks for having me. You can find me on Twitter at RobFFAddict. Writing for you guys at Going for Two. Also can find my stuff at Fantasy Six Pack, and I just started as a fantasy correspondent with Fantasy Pros.
Keeping busy. Love to see
busy.
You. Awesome. So we're going to hop right into it tonight. Start off some news and notes brought to you by the Dynasty Trade Calculator. Everyone hates bad trade offers, and you don't want to be that guy sending crap. So with the Dynasty Trade Calculator, you can tell if you're sending some quality trades to other people. Make sure to sign up with Going for Two /DTC. It's only $15 a year, so make sure to check that out. And for the first bit of news, we're hearing the rumor mill that Joe Mixon is set to handle the biggest workload of his career. Joe, are you buying into this? I feel like he's like the most talked about person now on Twitter, and all this is getting every route up.
Well, look, Mixon's definitely going to be a make or break pick. You got to have some stones there, I think, and a little bit of confidence. And I love the Bengals offense this year because I hate the Bengals defense. So that's a really good combination for me. I think they have to score a lot of points just to stay in games. But the difficult thing here with Joe Mixon is the history of the injuries, which has been there since he came into the league. And last year, although the injuries were bad, I think we all have to recognize the fact, too, that at a certain point, there was just no reason after Joe Burrow got hurt to push Joe Mixon. They had just made an investment in him the year before. I think they were very confident in him. That's why they paid the man. But at the same time, I think it's all about the value you get with Mixon. If you can get Mixon somehow as your second running back, if you're going round 1-2 running back and you get him somewhere around the turn or something like that, then I can understand that. As your single standalone number one running back, I think there's still some questions there for me in terms of that workload. It's great theoretically to give him that workload. I think he absolutely is up to it in terms of talent. It's just a durability question, and then adding in that extra game, that's also something to consider as well, how that's going to flow. But the talent's there, the upside's there. I think you have to just make calculated risks of how you want to go ahead addressing him, putting him on your roster.
I really like we mentioned about him, them knowing what they had, and when Burrow went down, they didn't want to push it with him. And that's getting really lost across a lot of people. Mm-hmm. So I'm a big fan of that. But yeah, I've hedged my rankings with them having like around that 15 spot. Rob, are you believing Mixon still, or are you out?
The one thing that fantasy managers do, we got short-term memory, In 2019, 19, he had 316 touches in 15 games. And in 2018, he had 280 touches. So, he's got that history of being able to handle that big workload. I'm buying into the fact that I think they want to give him the most work that he's ever had in his career with Bernard gone. There's been some questions about his consistency on a week-to-week basis. He's up, he's down. But I think in terms of workload, I think you can trust it this season. It's just a matter of what he does with that workload. But I'm with Joe here. As my number one running back, I'm a little uneasy about it. If he's my number two, though, I'm thrilled. I like that.
Yeah, I think if you get him with like Chubb or somebody like that, a real true workhorse guy, Chubb and Mixon's a good pairing. If you want to double tap running back early, that would be the one where I go, okay, you can kind of look there. Akers Mixon is a little tougher. Like then you got two guys who are kind of looking at that and trying to figure it out. I think in those early rounds, what you're trying to do is just get that stability. And And I do buy into that's exactly what they want to do. I think that's what they have intentions of doing. It's just whether or not he can stand up to it that becomes the real question.
Yeah, and we're going to stick with the running backs here. Rob, we're going to you first, even though we have a Patriots fan on board. ESPN's Mike Reese says Damian Harris sees Damian Harris as the Pats' number one back, and he said it's pretty decisive. Do you think we can have a real Patriots number one back?
Well, what do you mean by number one? I think that's where we got to start defining what that looks like. But he was really effective on the ground last year, and I think we could be looking at a situation where he's like a Josh Jacobs light. He's not going to catch a lot of passes, but I think you could see him handle 12 to 15 carries a game. If that defense comes back strong, they should be in a lot of positive game scripts. And I think the offense as a whole is going to be better this season. Where his ADP is right now, I think he brings a lot of value. I think that whole offense, actually, Joe, you'll love this, is undervalued. I think there's a lot of value across the board in New England, just because the general perception is really low after last season, which is understandable. They didn't do much last year, but I like Damian Harris as, if he's my RB3 or even lower than that, where you can get him, I think there's a lot of value to be had there.
I think Rob's actually onto something there with that Josh Jacobs light theory. I actually think that's a pretty astute observation there. He was very good last year when he carried the football, when he had 20 carries. He was very good. The problem is touchdowns, because Cam Newton's been that guy in the red zone. Cam Newton's been that guy on the goal line. The question is, how long is that going to last? And I don't think it's going to last very long. I really don't. Nowadays in the NFL, when you draft a young quarterback in the first round, that quarterback plays quickly. And people would say, well, why'd they pay Cam Newton this money? And my answer to that is very, very simple. They could, because they have so much cap room. And he was just merely an insurance policy to give them leverage that if they had to make a trade, they were able to do that thing. If, we have Cam Newton, maybe we're not going to have to move up in order to get Mac Jones. And they didn't. They ended up waiting where they were. They got Mac Jones anyway, who I think was, probably their guy, because they probably didn't want to move up. They weren't going to get Lance. They weren't going to be able to move up that far. And at the end of the day, we see the teams in the NFL that have the most success are the ones that have good young quarterback play, and they're not paying their quarterbacks all that much by comparison. And that fits very well, and I think, to the Patriots scheme of things and how they want to do stuff. It's funny. It's very reminiscent of when Tom Brady was the quarterback, where he was the young quarterback and they had a lot of money invested in the defense, and they just had a lot of role players around them, and it was all about execution. Mac Jones, I think, is going to be able to execute. I would be very surprised if Cam Newton plays more games than Mac Jones this year for the Patriots under center. That's just how I think it's going to play itself out. I saw a lot of Cam Newton last year. I saw too much Cam Newton last year. I think I've had a pretty good gauge of what Cam Newton has left in the tank. And if he wasn't going to show it last year, I don't think it's left in the tank. And Damian Harris, if and when that switch happens, to come full circle, Damian Harris then can be that guy who all of a sudden can not only give you the 20 carries and maybe the 80 to 105 yards range, but can also give you a touchdown or two. Under Cam Newton, that's going to be a tougher sell. So that's what hurts his value, because he's not going to catch the ball and he's not going to score touchdowns. Where does that leave him? In a precarious spot until the offense transitions to Mac Jones.
You hopped right into that next question with that quarterback competition. I have a follow-up on it. It's something that's really I'm curious, because there's such different quarterbacks with Cam and Mac. Is that gonna be a change in the offensive scheme if it's mid-season? Does that make it a lot harder? I
don't even think it's going to be mid-season. I think there's a real chance it's week one.
If it's week one.
I'm kind of been planting this flag here, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'll eat it. Oh my goodness, a fantasy analyst who's willing to admit when he's wrong about something. Stop the presses. But I just, once again, I think that's just the direction things are going. And even if it's not right away, I think it's going to be sooner than later. And yes, the offense is going to change. Now, the good news with that offense is no matter who's playing quarterback, I think Jonnu Smith's going to be useful, because Cam Newton's success when he was in Carolina was throwing the ball to the tight end named Greg Olsen. In terms of rookie quarterbacks, we always see them feel very comfortable checking down to the tight end. So that's going to work for Mac Jones. So the one guy that I actually think is offense proof in terms of the change of quarterback is actually Jonnu Smith, whereas Damian Harris's value is based on quite a bit. If it's Mac Jones, I think it goes up quite a bit. If it's Cam Newton, I think it goes down. And inverse with the wide receivers too, where Cam Newton, as far as passing last year, was, underwhelming is putting it kindly. And really, even in his MVP season, he had a lot of warts in terms of passing efficiency and things like that. It was just a great year where he was at his peak physical condition, peak athleticism, and he was just able to do things physically that nobody else could do in the field. But if you dig back a little bit into the passing efficiency, it wasn't great. So I think this is a matter of, again, sooner, not later, that this quarterback change happens.
Is there anything we're looking for, like camp-wise, what's going to lead us to believe that? Like if we're seeing something more other than just he's taking reps?
I think you're just going to see if Mac Jones can be efficient, if Mac Jones looks good in the offense and is sharp in the drives, and Mac Jones has a little of that BDE going for him. Like he's not nearly as good as he thinks he is, but that's something that actually works in his favor in the NFL. And I think that's kind of cool. And I think that swagger and that same thing is what you need, because there's going to be failure in there. And I think Cam Newton, from a leadership standpoint, is kind of the antithesis of that. Like he's a guy that, you can't tell if he just won the game or, because he seems miserable after he won and miserable after he lost. He's just miserable all the time. I think if you see Mac Jones look really comfortable, he makes a couple plays and all of a sudden the offense looks good, don't think that it's not lost on Bill Belichick that Tom Brady went out there and won a Super Bowl last year, the first year that he was away from Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick absolutely wants to win football games, and they've got Tom Brady coming into town to play a football game in about the first month of the season. So, like I said, they need to be good right away, and I think they have plans on doing just that. And they're also getting all these players back. Last year with COVID, they had more players sit out than any other NFL team, and they still, nearly were a 500 team. I wish they were not. I wish they had just been terrible, so they had a higher pick. But alas, they were, in that mid-range, which is even worse. But I'll say this. I think that you're going to see Mac Jones, and I don't think Mac Jones has to do all that much except show that he can be efficient with the football and show that he's confident. And I think those two things really go hand in hand when it comes to Mac Jones.
Yeah, I agree. I hope he gets in there sooner rather than later, too. And you kind of sold me on that. I'm all in on it. But,
yeah, and he's not make no mistake, Mac Jones is not Trey Lance. Mac Jones is nowhere close to that. Mac Jones is never going to be Trevor Lawrence. In fact, Mac Jones in a lot of their spots, I probably wouldn't like him, and it's not because I'm a Pats fan. It's because he fits what the Pats like to do, which is, can you be efficient with the football? Can you make the throws and the timing? Can you do those things, those little intangible things? And can you have the confidence to do them in big spots? And I think Mac Jones ticks all those boxes, whereas some other teams and some other offenses, it might not be the case.
Well, and there's a lot of financial stuff with Newton too. Like his contract in general is kind of tied to how many games he plays. It's very incentive based. So, I mean, if they go with Mac Jones early, there's a financial incentive to that as well. I'm with you. I don't think we see Cam Newton very long. Just his ability to pass the ball on a consistent basis, I think, is going to help the offense overall. And they brought a lot of weapons in on the offseason. Like there's some interesting players there that could be fantasy viable if they have a passer that can throw the ball consistently.
Yeah, Aguilar would be that guy. And I think he really showed everybody last year in Las Vegas that, he was just kind of a victim of circumstances with a bad Doug Peterson offense, and he got out of it. And all of a sudden he looked like a really, and I understand it was a little touchdown dependent, but when you're scoring touchdowns, that gets everybody's attention. And when you're doing it consistently, it gets them even more. And I just think that Nelson Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne, those were good signings. They're good football players. They're nowhere near the talent level I think they need still on offense, but at least they've set themselves up now with the quarterback of the future. I like the running back. I love the Jonnu Smith signing. He's one of my favorite players last year going into the season for Tennessee. Yeah. I think coming into this year, after the season's over, I think there's a really good chance you'll see them with cap space and draft capital take another game-changing type offensive player. Because, look, historically, they've kind of whiffed on these the last few years, whether it be N'Keal Harry, Sony Michel, and a few others. So, they've got some work to do, but I think we all know in the NFL, you either have the quarterback or you don't. So that's it. You have the quarterback, at least you can compete.
Yep, you build around it. And then last piece of news is we're seeing a bunch of talk about T. Higgins playing a huge role in that offense. Rob, what are you feeling on that? With all the talent there, can he carve out a significant role, or we're wanting him on our team's fantasy?
I mean, I like T. Higgins. I don't doubt that he can be the number one in that offense. But what does that look like? Like, what's the separation between him and Chase and him and Boyd? Is it significant? I don't think so personally. I think we're going to see a three-headed monster, kind of like Dallas, light Dallas. Who ends up leading it, I'm not quite sure, but I think all three of those guys are going to be fantasy viable. They're all going to have their own big weeks. The one thing that T. Higgins has going for him is that connection he had with Burrow in his rookie season, and it was really effective. I like T. Higgins as a back-end wide receiver too, but I'm not sure I'm buying into that top 15 potential quite yet. I mean, Chase, he's a generational talent coming out. He had that huge season in LSU in 2019. I think it's a three-headed monster, but I like them all. Who comes out on top, though? I wouldn't put money on which one it is because I think it could be any one of them.
Yeah. Once again, Rob hitting a really good spot there. Dallas Light. I'm going to steal that, Rob, for the next show, and I'm going to give you credit.
All right.
I like that. I agree with what you're saying too. Chase is that incredible prospect, incredible talent. Like he's a game-changing guy, and of course the built-in comfortability factor